Outer Orange.
It is your friendly neighborhood orange here today, and we're gonna do the usual. We're gonna go over some results that happened over this last weekend, and we're gonna see what in the world's going on. It's really important time, you know, 2023 BCS season. Let's go ahead and look at it. So here I'm on Fuzzy's thing. We got a lot to talk about here, so let's go ahead and get through it. And this is the Philippines premium section. So we got 2 Narukami, 2 Bermuda Triangle, 1 Pale Moon, 1 Spike Brothers, 1 Link Joker, 1 Nubatama. And yeah, this is a pretty diverse overall. Overall looks pretty decent. Now you notice the Bermuda Triangle side, we got a Riviera, we got an Eve deck, but something a little interesting, a little different from what people are used to. I don't think the list is shared as far as I'm aware. Probably like not go too deep into that deck because the person who took it was piloting for a little bit, so I'm probably just gonna let that one go for this one. We did also have everything else is pretty normal. I do like to see that we have the Nubatama. I do think Nubatama is a very strong deck, a very strong contender in the format. I do think a lot of people are really overlooking the power of that deck. I just think it's a very it's not a deck you really want to take. It's actually extremely hard to pilot. It's very hard to play sometimes, so it makes sense why maybe it's not as popular. I would compete with it if I could pilot it correctly, but I just can't. So that's just my personal opinion. But anyway, Pale Moon makes a bit sense too. I was a little surprised. I did underrate Pale Moon a little bit. I thought it was a little bit weaker than it actually is. It is on here, so obviously there's something. And then we got the Riviera. Riviera is just the normal Riviera stuff. I believe this one runs the Tira engine. Brothers just doing Spike Brother things, and then we have the Chaos, the Wing Choker stuff, which has been showing up quite a bit recently. So Derek Dow, we have Daniel, Derek Dow with Harry, and then we have Daniel with the Narukami engine with the double, and then we have Riviera in 3rd, and then we have Spikes in 4th. All very good decks. I think the Harry one might be the most surprising for most people. Everything else is like it's a little bit more standard. I will go ahead and take a look at the tier list here real quick because it actually is visible for us, so I can actually look at it. So this is what the Riviera list looks like. Let me reset this real quick. Tira's like a good just restander on her own, and it kind of works well with this deck. Honestly, you draw a lot, and then you have your restanding power, and in case you happen to miss Selena, which actually I don't even think they're running Selena in here now that I think about it, because most people run Selena for the Superior ride, but actually they're only just running the grade 1 Superior ride. They said screw that, and I can understand that. It's a little bit bricky once you put the Selena engine in. This is a little bit more of a consistent variant. The Lieselot and the search over here just really helps kind of keep finding Rivieras and just keep drawing, keep finding pieces, just kind of keep cycling. This draws, this helps like to countercharge to kind of keep yourself going, because it's whenever your Riviera card is placed during the battle phase, you kind of keep going through there. Overall, it's just a little more draw. Now we have this too that also helps draw, so I like this variant. It's different. It's basically the non-Hyrule variant, and I think Tira replaces Selena extremely well. They're also not running the other grade 3. The grade 3 that says you could discard it, grab a Riviera, put it, just drop and put it to soul, and put any card to soul. And if you grab Riviera specifically, you can basically bring it to hand and draw a card, something like that. I actually don't like that card. I like this option better, so I like this more. And the other thing that's really nice about this is in case you happen to need to go into a different secondary game plan, Tira is a really good Vanguard. A lot of people really misjudge the Vanguard ability, and it actually plays very similar to, it has a very similar effect to the Riviera one. Her on plays just basically bounces anything, and Riviera's on plays as a counterblast to draw. So they both essentially plus you cards. So basically they're both like good in their own way. They're both restanding Vanguards, and they both work well under her Altruda, which I think is the most important part. Like Loris, I think my least favorite part about Loris is that she's nice, and she's got this double force marker thing going on, but she doesn't work well under Heltruda, and Heltruda is like the strongest stride that Bermuda has access to. I'm not saying it's the best stride. Sometimes you have to go into other strides, but she is one of the strongest strides. So you're missing out on a lot by having to go Loris into Heltruda versus like Riviera or Tira. Down here's sort of what the stride zone looks like. This is kind of funny. I feel like they purposely had this in here just so they could flip it and make people like assume they're running Loris. That or they just felt like running this, because you can't just use the on-hit ability without going into all this Loris stuff. You can just play it as a normal stride. So, and it is a on-hit stride with absolutely no costs on it, and the on-hits do activate, so you can just bounce call for free without really having to worry about using any resources. So you can also just play it simply like that. Or like I said, they could just be teasing people and be like, haha, I run all these grade 3s. And it's like, no, I don't. So I don't know, whatever, it doesn't really matter. And then everything else is pretty standard. I think the Megiddo is the only thing in here that's like not really needed, but everything else makes sense. Olivia's a little odd pick or odder pick. I'm not gonna lie, I used to read it too just because that was funny, but space is getting tighter and tighter, so it's a little hard to make room for her now. Everything else makes sense. Standard got really ballistified, like it's just Ballista Central, which is what I kind of expected a lot of BCS to look like. It was either this or Gandiva, to be honest. I didn't expect there to be as much diversity, but I think a lot of what's been happening is there's been just so many mirrors. Like Rosemon's a good example. Rosemont had mirrors after mirrors after mirrors. Like I'm not even joking. Like every table I sat out next to me, there was like either a Gandiva versus Gandiva or Ballista versus Ballista, or it was like 4 rows, or it'd be like 2 to 3 rows of just a Gandiva and like 2 to 3 rows of Ballista. I wish I was joking. That's what it looked like. We did have a Zorga Greedon break through, and then we had the Hex Orb, and then the 5 Ballista, and then lo and behold, as people know, it's just all Ballista that made it in first, second, third, and fourth, which is kind of crazy. It feels like Steam Maidens all over again when you look at stuff like this, but it makes sense. I mean, the deck's good. The other decks are also good. Like the three decks, the top tier. This one's a little bit weirder though. We do have the mask. I don't think it's legal yet. I don't know if the mask is legal yet for this one, but these two make sense. They're both strong decks. Like so you know, you can top 8 with them. So understandable, but this makes even more sense to me. This is more what I expected things to look like. I am kind of happy to see something like this. I know it kind of bothers people, but seeing stuff like this will make it easier to see potential hits on decks like this faster, because this is proof that the deck's strong, right? It's proof that the deck can perform, and it's proof that the deck should probably get hit in some way, shape, or form. We just had the JP ban list happen, like, or that there's just revealed that officially goes live like this weekend, this Friday, right? So maybe with seeing stuff like this, maybe it'll push for our side to get something like this maybe a little bit sooner. To V Premium for the Philippines. So this we got 2 Bermuda, 2 Aquaforce, 2 Narukami, 1 Gear Chronicle, and 1 Genesis. Pretty similar. Some people might be surprised about MFD. I actually talked about MFD like a year ago. I know it was a while ago, but actually V hasn't changed that much aside from the Entrahana hit. And I talked about back. I don't know if you guys even know, but I actually took MFD to one of the events I went to, and I finished X2 sadly, because I had like one really bricky game and one really unlucky game that really costed me my run. And actually, funnily enough, my first round was Noman, and I beat him. He was playing Steam Maidens, but I did heal out. I got a little lucky. I healed out of like his combo, and then I basically popped off with another MFD extra turn, and he just died with like very little to recover. And this was like before all the restrictions, by the way, so it's just like that at peak Steam Maidens. But I will say I probably should have died. I just happened to heal out, and it saved me the game and got me the win. But yeah, I did take MFD for V, and I thought the deck was actually really good. I still think the deck is good. The issue with the deck is that it's insanely high roll, just like Poets and just like Melody. It just has a really high roll engine. The other thing, I think Hill Guardians really hurt the deck. And I also think actually, surprisingly enough, Entrahana getting banned actually hurt the deck too. So I personally haven't been competing with it for that very reason, but I do think the deck has its moments where it just goes like wild. Like that deck is like going first and you high roll, it's like it gets ridiculous. Your opponent's on grade 2 and you have 2 extra turns. Like their out is that they have to open up a bunch of Heal Guardians. They have to figure out the fact that they're playing into MFD. And a fun fact, at Rosemont, there was actually an MFD player as well, and they were actually going undefeated until I think the last 2 or 3 rounds. I remember seeing them in Seed 1 for a while. Like they were just up there for a while. So just warning you, the deck is definitely there. It's just a high roll deck. I believe this deck is kind of towards that, like it's kind of like the same mentality as Melissa. It's like an X2 deck. It's really good at peak, but you know, it's gonna have those 2 games. They get ripped through and it's just gonna die. And sometimes it's rough. When you low roll the deck, you just kind of don't do anything. So that's like the downside. Also sending back, you have to keep sending back MFDs like a lot, and finding room for all that is just really awkward. So, but anyway, sorry, I went on a big little loop about that, but we have some Narukami, which we actually had 2 Narakamis, which is a little bit more surprising because I would say Narukami is a lot weaker in V. I will say Vanquisher is fine, but the other one that we're looking at right here is just Vowling Reverse. I don't think is that strong. The Thavas makes sense, the Anj makes sense. Let's look at what top 4 looks like. So top 4 is Thavas in first place. Yeah, this makes sense. So second place is Vanquisher. Third place is Anj, and fourth place is Fenrir. So I guess the MFD player got rolled out, or they rolled out. It is interesting that we're seeing more Fenrir now. I guess people are starting to utilize in the toolboxes of Fenrir and just really enjoying how the deck works. Obviously, Thavas is like really strong. As I mentioned it before, and we keep saying this, but I brought up in the material. It's just how powerful this deck is and how it's basically the best out of the 3, I would say, which is like Luard. Which, surprisingly enough, we did see Luard on here. Vanquisher is actually also pretty good. People underestimate Vanquisher. The binding, the drawing, it does a lot. The issue is that it gets shut down by like defenses and stuff like that. So, but if you high roll it with it, like by high roll meaning your opponent doesn't have his many triggers, that is actually pretty good. So here is Puerto Rico. We have standard edition. So this is 3 Jets, 2 Messiah, 2 Gandiva, and 1 Ballista. That's crazy. Jet again is on the chart, and it's actually a pretty good chunk of the chart this time. Pretty wild. Again, just gonna throw it out there. People really thought this deck was gonna die, and it's still breathing, and it's actually breathing pretty well. I'm actually surprised that we're seeing this many results. I was expecting to see results. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't expecting it to be every weekend. Messiah, I'm not gonna lie, the Messiah one's a little weird to me. I know why why it's on here, but I think just into Gandiva, it really is a struggle bus. So it's actually very surprising that the Gandiva players are having a hard time beating Messiah if they're seeing them. I don't know. I do think that it deals well into Ballista because Ballista just has no removal, and not being able to remove actually makes Messiah better. Now I will say again, out of the two Stride decks, Jet is just better just because it toolboxes better. It just basically gets better access to its pieces before Messiah can. Just has a better situation, just basically the better version. If you had to pick a Stride deck, you want to pick Jet over Messiah basically, but they're both really good. And again, I talked about this like 100 times before. I feel like I'm going to say it 100 more times, but healing is just really big in both of these decks. Healing basically makes these decks like way insane because again, all three of these decks have a continuous casual 5k or more runs, and it just keeps getting stronger and stronger the way the game goes. So the more you heal, the better you're gonna play. And then this is what our top 4 looks like, which was again a double Jet, which is kind of nuts that we're seeing this yet again. So first place we have Jet, second place we have Messiah, third place we have Gandiva, fourth place we have Jet again. I'm not gonna lie, I legitimately did not see this, but I didn't look at the more recent ones recently just because I've been tied up with a bunch of stuff that's been happening on the side. So I actually didn't get a chance to directly look at these results and see what was going on. But it's actually wild to me that Jet is again in the same 2 slots that we had Jet last weekend. And yeah, like at this point, I'm just sitting here like, I guess Jet is like, I thought Jet was gonna top. I didn't think Jet was gonna top this much. So I was expecting to see results. I wasn't expecting to see this many results. So I'm gonna say like it's clearly doing well. I don't know what the matchups are like. I'm assuming some of these Jet players had to bump into Gandiva, had to bump into Ballista. There's no way they didn't see these decks, right? So there's just no way. And obviously since Ballista got knocked out here, so one of these players saw them. So you know what I mean? But regardless, congratulations. I'm glad to see the deck performing. I'm also not so glad it's not my favorite deck to fight into, but it is wild to me that people have been testing and that they just really like the fact that Jet's just a thing. Here has 2 Dimension Police, 2 Shadow Paladin, which is very weird by the way. 1 Nova Grappler, 1 Nubatama, 1 Narukami, 1 Golds. Nubatama again, I kind of already talked about it. Narukami makes sense. Gold also makes sense. It just plays around bugs really well if there's bugs, if people care about bugs anymore. Clearly we're not seeing any bugs results with all these recent results. Nova Grappler 1, a lot of people have been talking about how strong Victor is. I've seen it in action. It's actually pretty disgusting. I will say it kind of is a little piece reliant, but it's good. The Shadow Paladin 1, I think the Revengers 1 makes sense because that deck just basically plays like as like a Vanguard centric deck, and it plays around Hanali really well. So if people are running a bunch of Hanali, you just don't really care. And then the other one is just, I believe, Luard. I assume this is just Luard deck. And then Dimension Police we talked about before. It's just Big Ooga Booga. Again, another deck doesn't care about Hanali. Honestly, a lot of these decks don't care about Hanali. I think the only deck that might care is like maybe Golds, depending on how they play and how they build the deck. And depending on when they decide to go into their Ultima turn, because, you know, if your opponent Hanalis and you try to go into Ultima, you kind of get stuck. But the bright side is you still have 5 really huge attacks and you have a bunch of counter charge in the deck, so you should be able to play around it if you have a good setup, but it's still a little hard, I think, for Golds versus some of these other decks. And the top 4 looked like this. So we again had Narukami in first place. Was surprised. I think it's the same person actually that topped with Jet on the other chart for Standard. And then we have Carlos, and then we have Miguel, and then we have Jeremy. We've talked about some of this stuff before. It's not really that new to us. Dimension Police topping has been topping a while. Vanguard topping has been topping for a while. I think Gurgit is a little bit less known, but not completely unusual. You have the V Premium results for V, and this one also makes sense. Everything on here are all really good decks. We have the 2 Shadow Paladin, which is Luard. We have the 2 Great Nature, Leopold, 1 Aqua Force, 1 Golds, 1 Genesis, 1 Royal Paladin. Royal Paladin is the Jewel Knights package. Another very strong deck, very annoying deck. I would say it's like a little bit less, I think it's weaker than some of the other ones that are like more contenders, but the margin's like pretty small. And we had the Astro Poets. So again, Genesis doing Genesis things. And this is what final results look like. So again, Thavas in first place. I think that's the same Sergio, if that's the same Sergio. But anyway, second place is Sergio. Third place we have Ronaldo. And then fourth place we had Jeremy. And again, all very good decks, all very good contenders on here. All very good options. I would say, again, Thavas is definitely showing the light, showing that its strength, it's just slightly stronger than some of these other decks. I will say the margin is pretty small, but the margin could be just small enough to where like the first place, it could be a difference between first and second place, which is what we're kind of seeing here on basically every chart. Thavas has been hitting a lot of these charts recently, so I do believe that Thavas in the vacuum is a little bit stronger than like Luard, Leopold, and Anjar. Anj is probably the weakest. I'll talk about this before, but Anj is definitely the weakest of the group. And the stat part is just she's just slightly slower by just a smidge. And this will change after the promo comes out. But I think until the promo comes out, the deck is just going to be stuck in this loop of being like a third place deck and a top 8 deck versus like a first or second place deck. So if you guys enjoyed it, I didn't go into too much information because a lot of the decks that we're seeing are actually kind of decks that we've seen a lot or we've been seeing more of, and there's nothing too out there. I think most of what people have been talking about has been showing results. And there goes my cat. She gonna, yeah, she's going up the stairs. There she goes. You little kitty. Bye, bye, little baby girl. But anyway, but yeah, that's really it. Honestly, everything makes sense. I think V is the easiest one to do analysis on because everything's kind of already set in stone until we get the Bermuda promo and the Grimbu promo, which is coming. We are getting 2 other clans. I don't remember exactly. I think it's like Angel Feather or something else. Please like, subscribe, comment, all that wonderful stuff below, how you feel and any of that goodies. And as always, shop 50 cards out, shop code orange. You know, new sets are coming, new stuff is coming. Get excited, new trial decks are coming. Whatever you need, code orange. Yeah, anyway, peace out, guys. That's with that. I'll see you guys in a future video. Bye.